The hospital room was a sterile cage of silence, broken only by the rhythmic beep of machines and the shallow breaths of a dying man. Evelyn stood at the foot of the bed, her hands trembling, her dark eyes fixed on the frail figure of Richard Langston, the billionaire who had been her husband for 20 years. She was a ghost in his world, a secret kept from his family, his empire, his legacy. And now, as death loomed, she held a truth that could shatter everything he'd built or set her free. Evelyn had been 25 when she met Richard, a waitress in a dimly lit Chicago diner where the coffee was cheap and the dreams were cheaper. She was a black woman with a laugh that could warm a room and a heart scarred by loss, her parents gone in a car accident, her brother lost to the streets. Richard, then 40, was a regular, always in a tailored suit, always alone, his gray eyes carrying a weight she couldn't name. One night, over a slice of pie, he'd confessed he was lonely, that his wealth felt like a prison. She'd listened, and somehow, their worlds collided. Their love was a quiet rebellion. Richard proposed within a year, but there was a catch. His family, old money aristocrats from Connecticut, would never accept her. "They're stuck in another century," he'd said, his voice heavy with shame. "I'll protect you from them." So they married in secret, in a small courthouse with a janitor as their witness. Evelyn didn't care about the secrecy at first. She had Richard, and that was enough. They built a life in a secluded mansion outside Chicago, far from his family's prying eyes. She quit waitressing, pursued her passion for painting, and filled their home with color. But the secrecy gnawed at her, a slow poison. She was his wife, but to the world, she was nobody. The first challenge came early: isolation. Richard's business demanded he attend galas, charity balls, and family gatherings, but Evelyn was never invited. "It's safer this way," he'd say, kissing her forehead before leaving. She'd nod, but each time, a piece of her eroded. She'd scroll through society pages, seeing Richard with his sister, Margaret, or his nephew, Charles, smiling for cameras while she sat alone. She begged to meet them, to be acknowledged, but Richard's fear of his family's judgment was unshakable. "They'll tear us apart," he'd whisper. So she stayed hidden, her love for him battling her growing resentment. Years passed, and the second challenge emerged: her identity. Evelyn was proud of who she was, a black woman, a survivor, an artist, but Richard's secrecy made her feel erased. She'd overhear his phone calls with his family, his voice stiff as he dodged questions about his personal life. Once, Margaret visited their mansion unannounced, and Richard had Evelyn hide in the guest house like a fugitive. That night, Evelyn sobbed, asking, "Are you ashamed of me?" Richard swore he wasn't, that he was protecting her from their prejudice, but his words felt hollow. She began to wonder if she was sacrificing too much for a man who couldn't fully claim her. The third challenge was the hardest: their son, Ethan. Born 5 years into their marriage, he was Evelyn's joy, a bright boy with her curls and Richard's gray eyes. But even Ethan was a secret. Richard enrolled him in a private school under Evelyn's maiden name, claiming it was for safety. Evelyn fought this, wanting Ethan to know his heritage, but Richard insisted his family would reject a mixed child. The lie weighed on her, and she saw its toll on Ethan, who sensed he was different but didn't know why. By his teens, Ethan grew distant, angry at the shadows that defined his life. "Why can't we be normal?" he'd shout, and Evelyn had no answer, only tears. Richard's empire grew, his name synonymous with power, but Evelyn felt like a prisoner in their love. She considered leaving, but her heart clung to the man who'd once shared pie with her in a diner, the man who still held her at night like she was his anchor. She tried to bridge the gap, hosting secret art shows under a pseudonym, hoping Richard would see her as more than a hidden wife. He attended once, beaming with pride, but never invited his family. "They wouldn't understand your brilliance," he said. She stopped asking after that. Then came the diagnosis: pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Richard was 62, Evelyn 47. The news shattered their fragile world. As Richard weakened, Evelyn became his caretaker, bathing him, reading to him, her love a quiet force even as her pain lingered. Ethan, now 20, returned from college, his anger softened by grief. The hospital became their universe, and Evelyn faced a choice: stay silent or confront the truth. Richard's family descended, unaware of her existence. Margaret, a sharp woman with a voice like ice, demanded updates from doctors. Charles, the heir apparent, hovered, eyeing Richard's empire. Evelyn lingered in the background, a stranger in their eyes, her presence unexplained. One night, Margaret snapped, "Who is this woman always here?" Richard, too weak to answer, looked at Evelyn with pleading eyes. She could have stayed silent, let the secret die with him. But she was done hiding. In a moment that felt like stepping off a cliff, Evelyn spoke. "I'm his wife." The room froze. Margaret's face twisted in disbelief. Charles scoffed, but Evelyn stood tall, her voice steady. She told them everything: 20 years of love, of sacrifice, of Ethan, their son. She showed them her wedding ring, a simple band Richard had given her in that courthouse. Margaret called it a lie, but Evelyn didn't flinch. She pulled out her phone, displaying photos: their wedding, Ethan's birth, their life. The evidence was undeniable, and the room fell silent. The resolution wasn't neat. Margaret stormed out. Charles muttered about lawsuits, but Evelyn felt a weight lift. She'd claimed her truth, not for their approval, but for herself. Richard, barely conscious, squeezed her hand, a tear rolling down his cheek. "I'm sorry," he whispered. She kissed his forehead, forgiving him not for his sake, but for her own peace. Richard died that night, with Evelyn and Ethan at his side. The aftermath was chaos, legal battles, tabloid headlines, his family's fury. But Evelyn was unshaken. She and Ethan moved to a small house, free from secrets. She resumed painting, her art now signed with her real name, each stroke a declaration of her existence. Ethan, inspired by her courage, began studying law, determined to fight for others who felt invisible. At Richard's memorial, Evelyn didn't attend the public spectacle. Instead, she held a private ceremony at the diner where they'd met, scattering his ashes in the alley where they'd first kissed. She spoke to him, not with anger, but with love. "I was never your secret. I was your strength." The story of Evelyn Langston spread, not as a billionaire's hidden wife, but as a woman who reclaimed her voice. Her art sold for millions, each piece a testament to resilience. She never sought her husband's wealth, only her own truth. And in that truth, she found freedom, leaving a message for anyone listening: your worth isn't defined by who accepts you, but by the courage to be seen.